From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Polls have closed in the Caribbean nation of Antigua and Barbuda, where voting took place about a year earlier than expected. Electors in Antigua took to the polls to vote between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m.
So far the process is going very good. We're moving very fast. We have no delays. Most of the boxes has been filled up. The person has been showing up, so we know. The pace is flowing. We're not having no issues. It's just going.
This election is different, with 3 parties instead of the usual 2 trying to form the government. Prime Minister Gaston Brown of the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party has promised a landslide victory amidst economic growth in the country. The Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party went into the election holding 14 seats in a 17-seat House of Representatives. The opposition, United Progressive Party, holds 3 seats currently, led by former Finance Minister Trevor Harold Lovell in his first race for Prime Minister. A third party, the Democratic National Alliance, is led by former UPP member Joanne Messiah. In addition to the economy, climate change preparedness and disaster recovery are high on voters' minds following a devastating 2017 hurricane season. Key issues being debated on the campaign trail are the rebuilding of homes and infrastructure, ensuring better land ownership, especially in Barbuda, and attending to the population's social needs.
It's voting because it's constitutional, and basically everybody has that right to vote, and to make at least we know we put an effort into building Antigua and putting Antigua whatever it is and wherever it is.
Antigua and Barbuda, but more so Barbuda, fell victim to devastating Hurricane Irma, despite being among the smallest contributors to global climate change. And the twin island nation is feeling the effects. Thus, facilitating this election has had obstacles. Barbudans have been ferried across to Antigua to vote for the first time in its history.
My colleague Soyini Gray sent this report from one of the polling stations.
So we're here at the Tian Kunan Primary School. This is what has become the Barbuda constituency. This is where all Barbudans are going to be voting for Antiguan and Barbudan elections 2018. So because of the 2017 hurricane season, the island of Barbuda was absolutely decimated. We simply do not have sufficient infrastructure to facilitate the proper execution of their right to vote. So a situation was created where they picked this high school, Tian Kunan, for all the Barbudans to come across and exercise their vote. Barbuda is one constituency in Antigua and Barbuda. So there are about 500 Barbudans still on the island. Arrangements were made to transport them across here if they decided to exercise their franchise. And by all accounts, we spoke to electoral officials, we spoke to the returning officer, and the voting for the entire day has been going smooth. There's been a steady crowd of people since 6 this morning, and they expect that people will be coming until polls close at 6 p.m.
That was our Soyini Gray from Antigua. Observers have been on the ground monitoring the elections. Elections are typically without scandal. The observers are there as a formality. Caravan tweeted a picture of their observers as they head out before the 6 a.m. opening of the polls. Observers from the OAS and the Commonwealth are also on the island. Before the polls opened, Prime Minister Brown spoke exclusively to teleSUR English and gave us his take on these elections.
Well, I have no doubt. Even before the press conference today, they would have heard me, and I'm pretty sure that the Labour Party will win the next general elections. The issue is not about whether or not we're going to win. The question is how badly we're going to defeat our opponents. In fact, I'm of the view that we're likely to get all of the seats. So we could well end up with a clean sweep, but at a minimum, a landslide victory. They have to be taught a lesson. We've had a very destructive opposition here that has actually utilized a scorched earth policy. They want to burn the entire country into ashes to become king of the ashes. And as far as I'm concerned, the people of Antigua and Barbuda need to teach them a lesson. And it has to be a lesson of complete rejection so that they can reform themselves and come back as a more viable opposition, one that perhaps will be equipped to run the country. In fact, they have also presented to the people of Antigua and Barbuda a number of incompetent and criminal elements who clearly do not have the capacity to govern. So it is important that a very staunch message, a very stern message be sent by the people of Antigua and Barbuda to the UPP party.
The President of Peru, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, has resigned just a day before Congress was to vote on his impeachment. President Kuczynski left the presidential palace alone early in the afternoon with only a few staff to wave him goodbye. Members of Congress, including some of his former supporters, had called on him to go immediately after videos were published on Tuesday where allegedly revealed the government's trying to vote by votes against his impeachment.
This
political confrontation has created a climate of ungovernability, which is doing great damage to the country and prevents us from moving forward. In the face of this difficult situation that has developed and has unjustly made me appear guilty of acts that I have not participated in, I think the best thing for the country is that I resign as President of the Republic. There will be a constitutionally ordered transition.
Kuczynski will be replaced as president by Peru's first vice president, Martín Vizcarra, as soon as Congress accepts the resignation. Vizcarra is currently serving as ambassador in Canada and has to fly back to be sworn in. The apparent victors in this process are Keiko Fujimori and her Popular Force Party, who narrowly failed to impeach the president just before Christmas. But social movements have been demanding that all corrupt politicians in parliament be removed. And just as news of President Kuczynski's resignation came, our correspondent Jaime Herrera spoke to one of the leaders of the left inside the Peruvian Congress.
We are now with Congressman Alberto Quintanilla. He is the spokesman of one of the protest groups. What they have been demanding is not only to remove PPK from office, but everyone. Mr. Quintanilla, what do you think about the resignation of President Kuczynski?
After all the rumors, it looks like the president's resignation is a fact. I think it's a good act by him. Now we have to wait for the content of his resignation letter and to see if it is accepted or not by the leaders of Congress. If not, he must accept the impeachment. Another good thing about this is that Peru now has a chance to rebuild, renew, and make an anti-corruption agreement for the country.
You were at the meeting of the party spokesman. What was said about the resignation and how was it taken?
First of all, we must know what is written in the letter, and then we will see if it is accepted or not, and whether we will have to debate the impeachment motion or not.
Is it true that most of the Congress members from different groups will vote for that?
Well, after the Kenji videos, not only 87 but 100 congressmen are in favor of his resignation. If it is accepted, it will happen immediately.
How did Congress react to the demand that everyone should go?
What must happen is a deep renewal of politics and a pact against corruption. It is true that people are angry and we must face that. We must renew our politics, rewrite the constitution and control corruption. We must also make new plans so the private sector won't make all the decisions about the economy.
Do you support people who are demanding early elections and changes in Congress?
We agree as long as the rules are changed, because elections with the actual rules will end up having an anti-democratic result. The rules must be changed so politics can be renewed.
Thanks, Alberto Quintanilla. He is the spokesman of New Peru, one of the progressive groups in the Peruvian Congress.
So, let's take a look at some of the events that led up to the president's resignation. As cabinet chief for then-President Alejandro Toledo in June 2016, Kuczynski is accused of pushing through a bill that favored the Brazilian construction giant Odebrecht. A year later, his finance minister had to resign over another corruption scandal. Throughout 2017, workers in different sectors staged waves of strikes against his neoliberal policies. And in December last year, PPK escaped a first impeachment attempt, apparently in exchange for granting a pardon to Alberto Fujimori. Reactions to the resignation of the Peruvian president came from around Latin America, and particularly from Venezuela, where questions linger on the future of the Lima Group, which is based in Peru and led by Kuczynski, who had resigned the invitation to President Nicolás Maduro to the Summit of the Americas, which is set to be hosted in Lima next month. In a tweet, Venezuela Assistant Foreign Minister for African Affairs, Yuri Pimentel, remarked on the allegations of corruption surrounding other members of the Peruvian government. And a leader of Venezuela's United Socialist Party, Diosdado Cabello, asked who will lead the Lima Group with Kuczynski gone, as he had headed the charge against Maduro's government. Our correspondent in Caracas, Freddie Gillingham, has more on these reactions from Venezuela to the resignation of Peruvian president.
So now with Peru's government so badly marred in controversy, I think it's safe to say that here in Venezuela, officials will be welcoming this resignation and maybe possibly quietly even enjoying the fiasco currently unraveling in Lima. Peru under Kuczynski was of course a major ally to Washington. We know that Kuczynski not too long ago received and hosted Julio Borges, one of the leading members of the Venezuelan opposition, and considered a go-between between them and Washington. It is of course a major player in the region for leading anti-Venezuelan sentiment, but most importantly it is the host of the next Summit of Americas, which is scheduled to be taking place next month. This is of course a coalition of governments whose main and only real bond is their anti-Venezuela sentiment. Kuczynski, as far back as February, excluded Maduro from attending that summit. But the big question is now is how effective will that summit be next month? Peru of course needs a new president, but they also need a new host for that Lima group, preferably one that isn't so badly linked with corruption. All eyes here in Caracas will certainly be on what's developing over in Lima, but it's safe to say that I think the effectiveness of that summit next month could well be jeopardized as a result to this resignation.
That was Freddie Gillingham from Caracas. And we can now return to our main story, the election in Antigua. My colleague Soyini Gray is in Antigua and joins us live from the capital, St. John's. Hello, Soyini. So the polls are now closed. From what you have seen, yes. What has been the voter turnout?
Hi, Carla. Yeah, we're reporting from St. John's in Antigua. It's really difficult to tell you what the turnout has been, because when you go to the polling stations, we've been all over the island, the returning officers are telling you, yes, people have been coming, they've been lining up since 4 o'clock this morning, and the traffic has been heavy. But others are telling you, off the record, not officials, but just regular Antiguans who have connections are telling you they're hearing that the voter turnout is very low. Now, this is a very interesting situation because in Caribbean political legend, low voter turnout tends to favor the incumbents. So we need to see, we really actually have to wait on the results, which we expect that initial results may come in at 9 p.m. Antigua time, because there's 17 seats in the parliament. So once you have 9, you are the leader, you're the government. So, and official results will probably come in at 3 a.m. because in Antigua, you cannot count the votes in the individual polling stations. You have to take it to a counting center, and that lengthens the process for verification. So we really don't know. When we spoke to Prime Minister Gaston Brown, who is contesting the elections, he says he is hoping for an absolute decimation of the opposition. He wants to win all 17 seats, like very much what his colleague in Grenada just did, Keith Mitchell, last week. So we will see, because Prime Minister Brown says he is concerned about Antigua's future, but the opposition are saying that he is not. He's only concerned about himself, and what Antigua needs now is hope. So we are monitoring the elections. The results will be coming in, and tomorrow morning we should be able to tell you who's in charge in Antigua and Barbuda. But that's it from me right here in St. John's, Antigua. Back to you in studio, Carla.
Thank you very much, Suyini. So we'll be coming back with more news from Antigua as soon as we have results and final thoughts on this matter. Welcome back. Former Brazilian President Lula da Silva continues his fourth stage of his caravan. He arrived in São Borja in Brazil's southern state of Rio Grande do Sul. Accompanied by former President Dilma Rousseff, Lula was greeted by an enthusiastic crowd of supporters. Our correspondent, Andre Vieira, has been following the caravan and earlier sent us this report.
We continue to follow Lula's caravan through the south of Brazil. Yesterday, armed paramilitary groups threatened the caravan and tried to intimidate Lula's supporters. Yet, apart from these small fascist groups, the important thing here is the overwhelming support from those who came to greet Dilma Rousseff and Lula da Silva. This is one of the institutes built by the Workers' Party, one of the projects generated under Lula and Dilma's governments. Teachers, students and professionals gathered here to thank the former presidents for the gains under their administrations and to show their support for Lula. This is, of course, what the right wing can't stand: the love, gratitude and support that people show in spite of the attacks they receive from the opposition. People are often heard along the caravan route saying their lives were changed thanks to Rousseff's and Lula's governments. Next stop is the city of São Borja, to visit the memorials of João Goulart, former president, victim of the 1964 coup, and Getúlio Vargas, remembered for creating Brazil's labor laws.
The Attorney General's office in Colombia has sent to the Supreme Court copies of an investigation into Senator Alberto Castilla's alleged links with the ELN guerrillas. Castilla is a member of the Alternative Democratic Pole Party.
Senator Alberto Castilla says he only learned of the investigation from the media.
It's a letter sent by the prosecutor's office to the Supreme Court of Justice, which I heard about through the media on Friday. This has generated a whole situation and stirred up public opinion in the country. What should happen is that the court, which receives the information from prosecutors, should assess the documents and act accordingly.
The congressman considers this legal action to be political persecution. As a representative of the left in Congress, Castilla has raised debates over land tenure and taken a strong position on the implementation of the Havana Peace Accords.
But attention has also been drawn to the fact that during the same week, some parliamentarians of the Alternative Democratic Pole signed a letter calling on Gustavo Petro and Sergio Fajardo, together with Humberto de la Calle, to hold talks to allow a united project, a grand coalition to govern Colombia.
Colombia has seen a number of other unsuccessful legal proceedings, such as those against opposition leaders Piedad Córdoba and Gustavo Petro, among others.
Now we are concerned about this Attorney General, who everyone knows is a man who has been linked to big business in this country. And we are concerned about the repeated public allegations that condemn people before public opinion. And everything seems to indicate that these are without any substantive evidence.
Cesar Jerez was also a victim of such allegations due to his involvement in social movements in the Catatumbo region, where Senator Castilla is also from. Jerez believes that the investigations are an attack on the social movements.
Meanwhile, the severity of the situation in the Catatumbo is ignored. A war between the ELN and the EPL with dozens of victims to this day, the breach of the agreements with the FARC in that region, but also of the agreements coming out of the peace and strike in 2013 and the year immediately before that, which all sought precisely to improve the situation of structural exclusion and address the issue of violence suffered people in the Catatumbo.
For analysts, the current actions of the prosecution show the systematic persecution facing social leaders who seek transformation in Colombia and who have chosen the political path. Senator Alberto Castilla says he is calm and willing to abide by whatever the Supreme Court of Justice requires at any time.
José Manuel Jiménez, teleSUR, Bogotá, Colombia.
Social movements and civilians in Panama are protesting regarding corruption cases linked to former President Ricardo Martinelli, who still remains unpunished.
The Supreme Court of Justice is accused of shelving corruption cases related to former President Ricardo Martinelli. According to social movements, they keep saving him from facing justice.
We have complained about the Martinelli case and about selective justice, but Supreme Court is a filthy place where they use power as they want and don't as they should.
These accusations come from the 14 out of 21 files linked to Martinelli that the Panamanian courts have ignored or dropped. Among these cases, there are important files like the one related to excessive prices in grain purchases of $12.3 million, the expense of $13 million in equipment for the hearings against the opposition, and the alleged bribes he received to grant Panamanian Social Security, estimated to be around $14.5 million.
What a coincidence that cases against one of the richest men in the country just got closed. Instead, the common Panamanian, if linked to an investigation, must face justice at once.
Panamanian social groups say there are even more cases that remain unpunished, like the murders during Martinelli's administration between 2010 and 2012.
Nothing has been done about the massacre of Bocas del Toro, in which Martinelli and President Varela were involved. Real justice doesn't work for poor people and common civilians.
The former president's defense team is trying to avoid an extradition from the United States, where he has been arrested. People state that his return would be useless if the Panamanian authorities don't intend to respect the law.
The 17th International Informatica 2018 convention is taking place in Cuba. Events like this highlight the country's technological innovation and show how prioritized technological advancement is in Cuba.
The latest breakthroughs in Cuba going digital can be seen this week at the 17th Expo Fair Informatica 2018 being held in Havana. One of the aims of this international convention is to encourage people.
For us, the concept of technological sovereignty is included within the politics of digitalization. Advancement in this matter for our society means to also advance in the cybersecurity of our space in the internet environment.
Aiming at sustainable development, Informatica 2018 is the place where people can get to know more about Cuba's collective effort to achieve technological independence.
One of our flagship products is the Nova operating system, which is the Cuban distribution of GNU Linux, which has allowed us to start from the alliances with the Cuban electronic industry that our operating system is that installs on the computers, laptops and desktops that are assembled in the industry.
The Cuban electronics industry is concentrating on providing more secure and safe programs that open the way to both software and hardware made in Cuba.
We are proud of already having high-end computer products in the country. We already have i5, i7, 6th generation last year and this year. We are planning to work on the 7th generation produced in Cuban facilities in addition to Cuban operating system.
The development of the national industry of informatical and technological applications is part of the computerization process of the Cuban society. Laura Prada, teleSUR La Habana.
Now let's have a look at some other stories making headlines from around the world.
The head of the African Union has announced that 44 African countries have signed an agreement establishing a free trade area seen as vital to the continent's economic development. The creation of a free trade area billed as the world's largest comes after 2 years of negotiations and is one of the AU's flagship projects for greater African integration. Thousands of Kurds in Turkey are celebrating the New Year festival of Novruz under the shadow of the capture of Afrin in Syria by the Turkish army, arrests of pro-Kurdish politicians and the breakdown of the peace process.
We want stability in our country. We want peace. What else can we ask for? We want Afrin to have peace. We want the war to stop. The people who are dying are human beings. They have souls. We don't want them to die.
Kosovo's opposition party members have released tear gas into the voting chamber of Congress to block the vote on a disputed border demarcation agreement with Montenegro. The movement party claims the deal would see Kosovo lose 20,000 acres of its territory to its neighbor.
And we've come to the end of this news brief. There's so many other stories, as you know, you can find them on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.